Notice if there's a movement that wants to come through, and how can we slow that movement down to a place that starts to feel like we're regulating. And then once we've reached that position, that movement, we can start to look around the room and drop into the senses. So grounding through the senses, we're down regulating. Welcome to the Monday Movement series. We're focusing on not a specific body region, but a state of nervous system today, and that being the sympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system. I'm going to break that down briefly before we get started on the practice that's going to address the sympathetic nervous system. But if you're meeting me here, it's likely because you're feeling stimulated, stressed out, overwhelmed, and that essentially is what speaks to what the sympathetic aspect of our autonomic nervous system, like what it is. And so when it comes to somatic approaches of, helping aid, stimulus, sympathetic states, fight, flight, fawn, freeze modes, we can start to down-regulate, which means calm the nervous system, ground the nervous system, drop into the body with down-regulating practices. So when we think about sympathetic versus parasympathetic in terms of nervous system, we're looking at the autonomic nervous system being the part of our nervous system that regulates automatic responses in the body. Things like heart rate, breath rate, digestive responses. And they're the three main things we can think of that are really good examples of how we can tell our body is in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state. The other way to think of those two states within the autonomic nervous system is rest and digest or fight and flight. And so when we're in a sympathetic state, the state you've likely come into this practice with because you've clicked this video, it's resonated for whatever reason, consciously or unconsciously, we have an increased heart rate, an increased respiratory rate, and we also have a lack of digestion, perhaps a slowing of digestion or indigestion, an upset tummy, a lack of being able to digest with ease. And so these are all the hallmark signs that it's time to down regulate and drop down into the parasympathetic, into rest and digest. If on the flip side, however, you are feeling like you're in the parasympathetic nervous system state, out of the autonomic systems, we'll start to look at things like a lowered respiratory rate, a lowered heart rate, and a very easeful digestive system, digestive tract with minimal upsets. So sometimes we can come into somatic practices and feel like upregulating, like we feel a little slower in energy, a little, stagnant in our digestion, even though it's somewhat easeful. We can also drop too far into a parasympathetic state and we are in complete burnout and collapse, like vagus nerve collapse, nervous system collapse, because perhaps we were sympathetic and go for too long. And so that's where upregulating in somatic practices can be really useful and bringing us back up to a more sympathetic state if we haven't been there for a while. But we're here to downregulate into a parasympathetic state. So to get started, we're going to begin with a very simple practice. These are going to be beginner-friendly practices too, in fact. But to start our first practice, which is grounding through the senses, it's very simple. First, I ask you to drop into the space that you're in right now and simply find a movement or a position for your body in the space that you're in that feels somewhat calm and still, but within the realms of what feels comfortable. So likely it is that you are stimulated and you don't feel like holding still is super comfortable right now. Like you might feel like you need to have a little bit of movement, but just find what feels somewhat comfortable and still, even if you're still moving a little bit, and just allow that to come through naturally. Sense into your body. Where do you want to be positioned? How do you want to be positioned? Notice if there's a movement that wants to come through, and how can we slow that movement down to a place that starts to feel like we're regulating. And then once we've reached that position, that movement, we can start to look around the room and drop into the senses. So grounding through the senses, we're down regulating. So we're going to help orient through the senses, start noticing in the space around you with your vision. So that's one of the senses, colors in the room. And just take a couple moments to do this. And you can name the colors in your head if you want to. Just name 5 colors, and then once you've done that, start to notice shapes in the room, naming 5 shapes in the room or the space that you're in. And then noticing 5 textures. And then going even less specific, noticing through vision different shades of light. So for me, I can already see 3 different shades, now another 2. It's a little more abstract, but we're dropping deeper into the body, a little less conscious and logic. And now within the sense of vision, we're going to shift into noticing and naming 5 objects that we can see. So this is object orienting. So just take the time to name 5 objects that you see in the space around you. Notice how your body feels right now compared to when we started the practice. And now notice 4 things that you can feel inside your body and just outside of your body within the space around you. Notice and name 4 things that you can feel. Take your time. And now notice 3 things that you can hear in the space around you. And take your time again. When the body becomes overwhelmed, our awareness and our focus narrows because everything's too much. So we can only focus on one thing at a time in terms of what's happening in the background as well as our tunnel vision. And so orienting widens our awareness again. Now we're going to move into the second beginner-friendly somatic practice, heart and belly breathing. Now that we've dropped in through the senses, the sense of vision especially. With the heart and belly breathing, we want to place our hand on our chest, one hand, and one hand on our belly. It doesn't matter which ones, just do what feels natural for you. And once you've found that hand placement, again, ensuring your body feels safe in the space that you're in and that it's moving and positioned in a way that feels right, even if that changes over the length of this session, even if that's changed from the start. And just honoring all that and coming back to the hand placement, the awareness, bringing it back to the hand placement. Allow a natural breathing to begin without forcing or changing or trying to perfect it. And now imagine your exhale becoming slightly longer than your inhale. Inhaling for around 4 and exhaling for around 6, but not being attached to the count if that's not something you want to do. Just slowing the exhales. Noticing your hands move as you do this. That's what the hand placement's for. It's to anchor through touch and through breath. Notice the movement of the hands on the exhale, moving slightly slower than the hands moving on the inhale. And now bring awareness to your jaw. Notice if there's any tension, stagnant feelings, resistance there, uncomfortable feelings. Invite the jaw to soften. And then doing the same at the shoulders, noticing if there's tension, resistance, stagnant energy there. Just noticing. And inviting the shoulders to soften once you've noticed. And then noticing the throat, bringing awareness to the throat. Noticing if there's tension there, resistance, stagnation, stuckness. Dropping in and then inviting a softening there. And the softening doesn't have to be exponential in any of these areas. It can be just that tiny bit more, 1% more, 2% more, baby steps. Just invite it in and not being attached to how much you soften. And then lastly, bringing awareness to your belly, noticing if there's tension, stagnant energy, uncomfortable sensations within the lower belly. And inviting the lower belly to soften from there. So as you come out of this practice, taking your time, looking around things in the space around you, object orienting 5 objects, and just listening to me as you do that and come out of the practice, notice how you feel now compared to how you felt at the start. Notice the position and movement that your body has taken up in the space relative to the position and movement you were in at the start of the practice. And it's not to compare so that we can judge ourselves or be hard on ourselves, but we're just noticing the shift and noticing that something has changed and noticing how useful it was or how not useful it was, whatever it provided for you. And so instead of trying to force ourselves to relax in moments of fight and flight, high sympathetic states, overwhelm, we can simply come back to practices like these, beginner-friendly practices that allow our nervous system and our body to just experience a little more safety without force, without expectation or performance. Because the nervous system doesn't learn safety through information, it learns it through experience. And so sometimes the most healing that we can do is to stop trying to push through logic and consciousness and learning, and to just start listening and feeling and sensing our body. What helps your nervous system feel safe? Did you notice any shifts in your body from these practices? And if you did, feel free to let me know in the comments below how you found the shifts, what you experienced, if it was useful, and just take note of what you found was useful and see if you can integrate it into your life. It could be as simple as, the little part of the practice where we lengthened our exhales. It could be as simple as looking at the colors in the room, noticing the objects in the room, noticing the sounds, coming back to the senses. It could be as simple as allowing your body to take up space in a room, like where we first started, and allowing it to move how it wants to, but in a slightly slower way, softer way. It could be the body scan we did where we noticed tension and allowed it to soften. So just take what resonated from this practice, leave the rest. It's one of my favorite sayings. And I truly hope you enjoyed and got something from this practice. I will see you next time.